What's up, everybody? This is Ruben Garcia, and this is a beautiful day. And today on the Proven by Ruben podcast, we have Marc White. What's up, brother? How are you?
Doing great, man. Thanks for letting me come.
Of course. All right, so if you could tell everyone who you are, what you do, how you do it, and all that good jazz.
Awesome, yeah. So my name is Marc White. I've been in real estate for 15 years. I work with the White Group in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
I am the CEO of our sales team. Last year we did 125 units, closed a little over 1.3 in GCI.
Awesome. And that's a fantastic number. Even better than that. Now, you said you increased sales 10%?
Yep.
But net was...
Yeah, so our units went up 10%.
Yeah.
But our profit went up almost 300%.
That's huge, especially for a lot of people who are listening that are business owners. Their eyes, I'm sure, just got huge on that. And we will get there. However, let's back up a little bit. What even got you into real estate? What were you even thinking about when it came to real estate?
Yeah, so I wanted to do something that, like, I was at a job that I loved, but...
What was that job?
So I was working as a minister at a church in Atlanta, big church. Learned a lot of great leadership things from the church. But I wanted to have the ability to control my life.
Right.
To control my income. I had a guy who gave me a pay raise, and he couldn't even tell you what my job was. And I struggled with that. Internal struggle on, is this the right fit for me?
Wow.
Met with a really good friend of mine who said, hey, you need to do you. And I said, okay. And he was an executive at Bell South at the time. And so I said, yeah, but I'm a minister. And he goes, where do you think I spend all my free time? I'm just mind blown at that moment.
Right.
And I realized that most of my closest friends were the adults that were working with us in youth ministry every day. It was, my best friend and his family and everyone else. And I said,
right.
I don't have to do this. So I moved to a new town with my wife who had a retail shop. And I just said, okay, what am I going to get into? And I started throwing out my resume at like 2 places, printed off like 10 of them, gave out 2.
Yeah.
And then I ran into a buddy who was getting ready to go down to do some relief work after one of the hurricanes. And I said, I want to have a job where I can stop and do whatever, 100%. Whether it's ministry after a hurricane, whether it's, the flooding in West Virginia that happened a couple of years ago. I can literally drop what I'm doing and go help.
Yeah.
That's where my passion was in years of ministry.
Right.
So I started talking to him. I knew that he was in real estate, and he's like, this is what you should do. Now, back up 6 months, my dad was getting his real estate license. And I was like, okay, I could do this too.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
I had been reading Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had been through book after book. I had read a lot of stuff that really started showing me that the greatest way to get to where I want to be in life is to create it myself.
That's right.
And so going through a lot of Napoleon Hill and some other great writers, I started realizing that this was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. I also knew that real estate investing was where my retirement was going to come from, where I could build a legacy that I could pass on to kids and grandkids through real estate investing. So I started reading every single book that was out there.
Right.
Kind of fast forward a little bit, the dream kind of started becoming a reality. And then we started realizing that where the ceiling was 5 years ago has been lifted off. It's almost like every couple of months right now, learning new and greater things to help us really get to where we want to be. And now I realize a year after I really started planning my retirement, my exit strategy and everything else and putting it into motion, my goals are probably a little too low. At the same time, even where those goals are at, I would be immensely happy to be there.
Right.
And so it's kind of a cool thing to sit there and say, I saw where I was, where I had limitations, and I see where I can go now. And I don't have to do any of these crazy things. I just have to, keep account of who I am and what I'm doing.
Right.
And everything else works out for itself.
What happened to your the circle of influence that you were around at the moment when the light bulb went off and you said, oh, snap, I might have to get my real estate license? What did the people around you, what were they telling you? Besides that one friend who was going to get you into real estate, when you made that switch in your mind that was something you were going to do versus give out resumes, right? Salary versus commission. What were some of the people around you saying?
So some of the people were pushing me back a little bit saying, hey, is this really what you want to do? I thought you were going to be working at the church, stuff like that. Most of my circle of friends were all in a church anyway. But interestingly enough, about a year before that, one of the gentlemen who actually helped lead our praise band had just started investing in real estate. He was 20 years older than me, and we were both working through Rich Dad, Poor Dad at the same time.
Oh, dang.
We were having conversations around it all the time.
Right.
And I said, this is some really great stuff. You know, how do I put this into action? And so we had some amazing conversations around that. And what I started realizing is there was people that wanted to hold me back because they couldn't see this. They thought that you had to see your safety net.
Right.
That you couldn't create your own or anything like that.
Right. And
I started realizing that what they think is a safety net was a hindrance for me to accomplish anything great that I wanted to accomplish.
Right.
And the interesting thing now is I see what I was doing then and what I was getting paid for then with my future goals and everything else that I'm pacing towards now. I mean, I was at church for 6 hours on Sunday helping out. Like, I love still doing that stuff. I haven't lost any part of that.
Exactly.
I actually may have gained some now because of my business experience.
Right.
At the same time, because of where our business is growing and everything else, when there's a need and it's a monetary need, I can easily fill that.
That's right.
Sometimes, you know, in the past, like especially when I was working in the church, I didn't have the money to fill monetary needs back then.
Right. Plates, go back out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is I'm able to focus on being there for the church, helping provide in leadership, and at the same time financially being able to help support the ministry in ways that I wouldn't have imagined.
Right. So some of those people in the church, have they, my guess is that they changed their viewpoint, right?
Some did, but there's still some that struggle with it.
Right.
We moved, so we moved churches right after that as well.
Oh.
But it's interesting how some of those people disconnected with us.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing that happens in our life.
Right.
You know, I look back 2 years ago that people I was friends with in real estate, and because they didn't change where their business is and I did,
right,
I can't spend a lot of time with them because they're still trying to hold me back.
Right.
They're still trying to tell me, you know, how to hire my first employee.
Right.
And they're still struggling hiring their first one for the 5th time.
That's right. Isn't that interesting? Through growth, the people that either rise with you, the people who stay behind, or the people that you're looking up to that you start striving to be, and it just pulls you down, kind of pulls you through.
Yeah. So for me, it was making sure that I surround myself with more people. I'm gonna have to meet new people.
Yeah.
As I continue to raise my ceiling or bust through the ceiling that I'm at, I got to find new people.
Right.
We talk a lot about who you surround yourself with and how important it is. Mm-hmm. And not only did I see that, but I also saw them pulling me back.
Right.
By telling me you shouldn't do it.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't really work that way. And then starting being around people that say, that's exactly how it works. You know, what is your next step?
Exactly. Yeah, I just got back from the 10X Growth Con down in Miami, and that was like a punch in the face when we started talking to some of these people that were there and some of the masterminds. I mean, they called me out in, 15, 20 seconds, and it made me super uncomfortable, and that's what I needed, right? And I came back and I cut 3 things that I was saying yes to, that, by the way, were streams of income, to allow more time into my world to focus on the things that we all mastermind there, right? But they're going to challenge me, and for some people that safety net isn't there, right? It's not there yet. It will be, but only through my own growth of focusing on me, which I struggled with in the very beginning as well, because I was saying yes to so many things.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I learned is that you have to look at what you're doing, self-reflection, self-awareness. We talk about that so much. To be, my brother said this the other day, to be a great business owner, one of the most important things that you have to have is self-awareness,
right,
and the ability to adjust. So I'm sitting there looking at that and saying, when I start to become aware of those situations, what am I going to say no to? Just like you said, we had to do the same thing. You talk about, and you know, I know we'll talk more about it, but when you talk about the profit of our company, we were doing what everybody else does, and we're looking at the same figures. The problem is we're missing some of them. And when we started realizing that we can't solve the world's problems first we have to start at home.
Yeah.
And so we started at home and saying, okay, now let's fix this. Who's next?
Right.
Who's next? And that was a big thing for us. But it requires saying no.
Right.
And I'm not good at saying no.
Right.
I love, my big why in life is to help people get where they're going.
Exactly.
It was something that somebody helped me understand that about 10 years ago.
Right.
It was 2009. I was in Chapel Hill, and it finally hit me like a light bulb. The thing that pushes me more than anything else is helping other people get where they want to go,
Yep.
which works out great in our industry because physically I can help them move to the house they want to move to. But at the same time, you know, when you sit there and we're talking to a bunch of new agents or a bunch of seasoned agents that just are struggling with one part of their business, if it's something that we figured out, why wouldn't I share it?
Right.
And at the same time, because that's such a passion in my life, I have to learn how to say no when people ask for help, but then won't do anything with the help.
Right.
And so we're having, you know, it's sometimes it hurts to say no because you feel like you're really letting somebody else down.
Yeah.
At the same time, I've started realizing that other people have to be responsible for their own selves.
Yes.
And I have a responsibility to my family,
Yep.
to, you know, my team. That has to be my first responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a huge aha. And I think that, you know, if you're in that world where you are that person who always wants to give, it's natural to not think about yourself. And you give, and you're always doing that. And I think, would you agree that you hit a ceiling at a certain, I'm not sure where that place is at, but you hit the ceiling if the money isn't there to help support that as well, right? And so you got to kind of turn around and look at yourself and say, okay, so how can I raise more money in my world? Because through that, you could impact a lot more people's lives.
Right. Well, so you either have to raise more money or raise more influence and awareness.
Right, for other people?
For other people to be a part of it.
Right.
And so for us, it's a little bit of both.
Right.
You know, how can we raise an awareness of a certain subject or a certain issue that we can be a part of? And what we started realizing is we have great influence. I know one of the agents in your office just asked why we pulled back on some of the growth that we've had in the past.
Right.
Well, very similar to what you said, where you had to cut 3 things out of your life. Mm-hmm. That's what we learned to do. We had to cut what we were calling growth because it was actually hindering greater growth.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You know, that's one of the big important things that was kind of a big aha for me a couple of years back, is that when you sit there and say everything looks great, it looks great. If you're not tracking, is it actually doing what you want it to do? Then are you holding yourself back in that situation?
Right. And some of those incomes or some of those streams of income wear a mask, right? Because it wears a mask of comfortable, and it's coming in, and you're very comfortable with it. And until you have either yourself or usually someone around you that questions that, and is it really pulling the ROI for you, your family, and building that, it's the time to question it. But sometimes, for me, honestly, it put on a mask. I was like, oh, this is nice and comfortable. But man, when you start surrounding yourself with multipliers, they're like,
yeah,
back at your life, you know?
Right, exactly. And one of the things that we started doing is we wanted to start investing in other people's lives to let them start to multiply as well. And so doing that, we sat there and said, okay, we got to cut out some of this other stuff where we really don't have the same influence. So when we start looking at, we're building our retirement and legacy through real estate investing, which is what my plan was over 15 years ago. I said, how am I going to make this happen? And I started realizing I got to surround myself with people that think the same way. While I may not have as many right now, I'm building that.
Right.
And we're sitting there saying, how can we build other things for other people? Our friends. I don't want any of my friends to ever go in to retirement and saying, I can't retire.
That's right.
When I can step in right now and help show them, it may not be the exact route that I'm taking, but there are opportunities out there that their 401k may not be able to do.
Oh yeah. So when would you say you've gotten more purposeful about the real estate investing?
This past year.
So 15 years ago, thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
just got purposeful in the past year. What was that switch? What was that switch for you to say, you know what, enough's enough, it's time to dive in?
I think part of it wasn't as much that I was scared to do it, as much as just timing of a few things.
Right.
Again, I think it was pushing stuff off.
Yes.
And just
what I was getting
getting rid of some stuff.
Exactly.
And saying, okay, now that this stuff's out of my way, I can now take this on.
100%.
And, you know, I'm blessed to be in business with family that, you know, and trust and almost can predict the moves that they're going to make. So, it's vice versa. They can predict the moves that I'm going to make. So I don't have to sit there and wonder what's going to happen next.
Right.
In doing so, it allows us to move our business quicker and faster.
Right. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So that's where I was going with that too, is that, you know, what is it? I think it's a joke. It might not be a joke, but the mechanic, their car runs like crap because they never have time to really work on their own car because they're working on everyone else's car. And as soon as they start saying no to the beaters or the people who are out there that are beating their car up, they're allowed to work on their own car. And in your world, it looks like you started that this year. So what part about the real estate investing? I got a lot of real estate investor friends, so I'm going to stay on this one for a second. What do you look for when investing for retirement, something that's going to push out some good cash flow?
So we look at a couple of different things. You know, I mean, also, most importantly, we're like, hey, is this structurally sound? Of course, stuff like that.
Right.
Like, and I'm talking about like, we look a little bit over the top, like, you know, what's the neighborhood doing?
Sure.
What are the potential pitfalls? You know, is the city taking care of land around it? Things like that. What potentially could go wrong?
Right.
And then what's the probability of that happening?
Gotcha.
We focus on ROI a lot, but we also know there's appreciation is a big part of the game. At the same time, we focus more on the ROI than we do appreciation. We actually don't calculate appreciation the first time we do it.
Because you just know for sure it's going to happen because time.
Right. Because we're not investing for tomorrow.
Right. Exactly.
You know, I've read all the books.
Yeah.
I know what they say. You hold them for the long term. And so that's a big part of what we're doing. And then, you know, I'm even looking at, hey, if we can buy something with some land that potentially could be developed. Like if I'm looking at it saying I would develop that land later on, then great. As long as it cash flows today, it may be a good purchase.
Right.
So we're looking at things like that. And then we're also, you know, because we have property management experience, I'm able to look at some things a little bit deeper.
Right.
So when a lot of our clients are like, man, what type of carpet should we put in here? And we're like, there's new product out there. You don't have to do that anymore. So we're looking at how can we reduce expenses? Mm-hmm. How can we put in a product that's going to last longer so we can reduce expenses and our tenants be happy with it?
Right.
So from an investment standpoint, we're looking at long-term and everything we do.
Right.
We bought a house not too long ago that honestly, I mean, it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, small floor plan, but it's in a neighborhood that has larger floor plans. So we're one of the smallest, which means we're one of the most expensive per square foot.
Right.
We bought it at the right price, but at one day, we may tear down the back wall and bust out a master suite off the back, and now our appreciation just went crazy. Like we'll get a great return on that, and we know it. So going in, we gave ourselves multiple options.
Right. Exactly. So how much % of your business on the investing side would you say is single family? I mean, is it one?
So all of the stuff that we're doing right now is single family townhome type of stuff.
Got it.
Our goal is to get into like small apartment complexes, things like that.
Right.
Because we see there's a lot of value in that. We're actually managing an apartment complex right now, and we're helping them flip it. So
cool.
we're flipping it for rent, not for sale.
Right.
And it's working really, really well for them.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the numbers and realizing it's going to take them less than 2 years to recover their flip, which is crazy. You don't find that very often.
Right.
So we're seeing that. I'm now actually taking what I've learned there and giving it to other investors.
Right.
So instead of flipping houses, flipping apartments or smaller condos and stuff.
Right.
Just seeing huge opportunities there where you can see your ROI shoot through the roof almost.
Right. Is there a floor of ROI that you won't go below?
I don't try right now, and it's just market driven. I don't want to look at anything under like 10%.
Got it.
If possible. So that's a cash on cash return.
Right.
You know, cap rate can be a little bit lower than that, but cash on cash, we're really looking at about 10%. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have said 15%. That's how much our market changed in 1 year from an investment side.
Right.
But again, when I'm looking at part of it is I have the luxury of saying no to other stuff.
Right.
So now I'm spending time looking at investment properties every day.
Right.
And if I look at investment properties every day, I can find the golden nugget. Interestingly enough, the last one we just invested in never got on the market.
So you're now looking at homes off market. Are you guys?
They're starting to find us. That's the interesting thing. We're starting to get calls and saying, hey, can you meet with this person?
Right.
So the last two that my brother and I have purchased, neither of them ever hit the market.
Right.
So we're able to buy them before they hit the market. That's great. It just happened to be the last two.
Right.
But we scour the market, one, because I want to know what the current rates are. Like if my current rate, I can get a 15% return versus a 10% return, I need to know that.
Right.
Right now, it's hard to buy anything over 8%.
Right.
So I'm not as excited about buying today as I was a year ago.
Right. That makes sense.
At the same time, you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
They open up a new train line. I may say, okay, let's invest some money in this right now.
Right. Right. Are you looking at working with any wholesalers if you're starting to get deals that are off market?
It's a little harder right now because our market just rolled out with 4 or 5 wholesalers that are national stock traded wholesalers. So Offer Pads, Knock, Open Door,
right.
All of those have hit our market pretty hard in the past year.
Got it.
So it's with a couple of them getting big kind of last fall. And when I say big, they're still small compared to some of the big teams in Charlotte.
Sure.
But they're starting to get some influence. They're essentially intercepting that wholesale market. So they're now taking the wholesale market and make it more publicly visible.
Right.
The great part is they've opened up the public's eyes to that option.
Right.
And we can go in as salespeople and have a much better conversation. We're not trying to cut your legs out from underneath you.
Right.
And honestly, the last one that we bought, that's exactly what was happening. Investors were undercutting them. She told us what the highest bid was and told us that she would love to sell it to us. So we raised our bid. So we paid her more than she would have accepted less from us, but we paid her extra.
Right.
Just because we wanted to feel comfortable with it, and we still knew what the ROI was going to be.
Right, exactly. Have you guys ever moved into flipping?
We haven't yet. I get asked whether or not I'm getting my contractor's license on a maybe bi-weekly basis right now.
Is that a yes or a no?
So we haven't yet.
I didn't mean to the question. Yeah. That sounded super rude.
No. That's it's something that. So I love construction. Yeah. Again, when the hurricanes happen, I love jumping in and helping. I have a huge construction background for mission work.
Right.
So I love that opportunity. But what I started realizing is we've got to get some other things. The flipping business isn't as strong as it was a couple years ago in Charlotte. So what we would rather do is continue to do what we're doing now. We're essentially learning flipping from watching other people do it.
Right.
I'm there. I'm helping them make decisions about it. So I'm seeing it without having to spend the money myself, which is the greatest way to learn anything.
Sure.
And because of that, I think that when the market changes again and flipping becomes something that's of interest to people, we're going to be able to do it and make some money with it.
Gotcha.
But right now, it's still I'm focused on our sales goals. I'm focused on our property management growth goals.
Right.
Those are my 2 biggest things, and everything else just pulls it back.
Right.
So I'm focused on those, and then knowing that I'm learning some of the other things that we're going to need for the future. Right. And that'll help. I know there's a lot of people that still talk about flipping and stuff. I think you can make a lot of money without doing it.
Right. Oh yeah. So I love the buy and hold world.
Yeah.
But flipping does pretty well in our market.
Well, the other part is and I know that the book Hold says this.
Yeah.
That you've got to buy something that's worth flipping. If you're going to flip something, you got to buy it where you can also rent it out and make money.
Right.
Otherwise, you don't need to buy it.
Right.
So what does that look like? How much work are you going to put into the property if you're going to, at the end of the day, you can't flip it?
Right.
Somebody told me the other day that there's a house that was flipped that's been sitting on the market for 6 months. In our market, that's unheard of. So they probably put too much into it before the market started slowing down a little bit. Well, found out that person's not a real estate agent. I could have told you last February that our market was slowing down a little bit.
Right.
Now, it didn't really hit us in our price points till the end of the summer.
Right.
But that person didn't know, and they're just throwing money into something, and they didn't see what was going on. So going back to the very beginning, 15 years ago, even before that, I knew real estate was where my wealth and everything was going to come from. I had to do that.
Right. So on the property management side, how many doors do you guys have?
So we're at about 125 doors.
Nice.
I haven't done a count in a couple of weeks. Part of it is that for for me, for some reason, it's a struggle to keep up with the exact number.
Yeah.
Part of it is I don't count them until we have people in them.
Gotcha.
So if we take on like a big complex and we have some vacant stuff, or if we take on like we got 5 houses this past week,
Right.
There's nobody in them yet. I'm not counting them yet.
Okay.
But what we did is we just came up with a goal for this year. Last year we essentially grossed about 80 something properties,
Right.
which was great.
Wow.
So we almost tripled last year.
Wow.
It's not really what we plan to do this year. Part of it is I just sat there and said, what's healthy growth look like? I know one of my, I was on a Facebook post group earlier today, and somebody said, well, if your growth isn't this, then are you really focused on the business? And I kind of laughed about that. And I was like, be careful telling other people what their goals are.
Right.
Because for me, we've had healthy growth for 3 years in that business, which I think is important for everybody's business to have healthy growth.
Right.
That number's different for everybody.
Right.
For me, where I'm at, healthy growth has to do with personal time, spiritual time, health time,
Right.
something that I've not done well over the past couple of years,
Right.
and I'm saying I have to do well.
Right.
So I have a goal this year. It's actually to do less properties than we did last year. I want to net 52 new doors this year. And netting 52 doors, that's one a week.
Why that number? Just because?
Just cause.
Yeah. It sounded right when you
80
said
sounded
1 a week.
crazy, which is pretty much what we did last year.
Right.
So I said, what does 52 look like? Part of it is we're to the point now that we know we have to add employees to keep it going and keep our customer service at the level that it's at.
Right.
Well, doing that, because we have to add 2 employees, I got to spend time working with them and helping them.
Yeah.
And I knew that was going to take some time away from it.
Right.
But the other part for us was that just where our current clients feel the same level of service the whole time. So getting to that point where we really needed that first full-time hire, because we do have part-time help right now, but where we got that first full-time hire,
Right.
that's where we're at right now. Honestly, it was about 10 doors ago.
Right.
But we know we need it now. So that's a focus. So I said, you know what? Let's spend the time training people, train them well, get them really into the business. If they need me 20 hours a week, I need to be available 20 hours a week.
Right.
Same thing with our sales team. We started realizing that, which is why our unit growth this year is 20%.
Right.
Nobody can tell you if that's a wrong or right number. For us, it's a right number.
That sounds good. The numbers
Yeah.
I look at, 20% sounds pretty good.
Well, again, it's 10% last year with whatever the 200 and something, almost 300% profit.
Right.
That's what we started looking at, saying,
Right, exactly.
what's healthy?
Yeah.
How do we keep the service at the same level but increase profit?
Right.
So what we started realizing with both businesses is our employees are they're the most important part of our business. Mm-hmm. We got to take care of them. We've got to help make sure that they're taking care of our clients the right way, and doing so, it'll increase the profit. Now, our profit may not have the same growth that it had last year. I really doubt that it will, just being
Right.
realistic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's you wouldn't have convinced me a year ago that we would be where we are today.
Right.
I couldn't have dreamed it. We exceeded our profit goals immensely. We really didn't even have them because we weren't even focused on it.
Right.
We just started saying, we don't feel like we're doing it right. Let's go back and do it right. And so a lot of it is we started saying no to things that didn't feel like us. So we started saying no to, like the agent earlier that asked about, an ISA on our team.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have an ISA on our team because it doesn't really fit us well.
Right.
Our clients want to hear from us because they're not just clients.
Right.
Most of the people we work with, we're friends. We've known each other for years.
Right.
If not, it's a referral from one of them.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to treat them the same way. We want to begin a relationship with them the same way. We can't do that if we're cold calling people. We
Right.
can't do that if we have somebody who's doing the calls for us.
Mm-hmm.
So what we had to do is we had to give our agents time back. So what could we do to give them time back? And that's where our focus has been for about 6 months, is figuring out if we want our agents to get up to 40 to 50 units a year, we had to give them time back.
Right. And you were doing that through...
A lot of different. So we started looking at where everybody's spending their time,
Right.
and then saying, okay, one of the biggest things, of course, was a full-time showing partner.
Right.
that full-time showing partner is giving them a ton of time back on the buy side. On the listing side, our agents were dealing a lot with organizing things that just were outside of their realm. I mean, we have a marketing person now that can take on, I mean, I just gave her my login to Facebook and said, here, you know, reshare stuff. I don't need to do that.
Right.
Honestly, if you told me to do it, it'd take me 5 hours before I get to sit down to do it.
Right.
So just take care of it for us and let us utilize some of that stuff that's really pulling away from the time that we're spending with our clients.
Right.
There's a great book called Never Eat Alone. Mm-hmm. And if we would focus on our people more, then that will take care of so much of our business. Because again, a lot of our businesses, the friends and clients that we've come to know over the years. So going out and saying, hey, go grab a cup of coffee. Yeah. Go grab, break bread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, especially in our society, people are missing out on that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you and I were talking about it briefly a couple of minutes ago before we started. People are hiding away in their offices and not coming up for air. Yeah. Because they're so into what they're doing. Yeah. Working so hard at hitting numbers and stuff like that. And what we're doing is saying, hit your numbers and make sure you're inviting people for coffee, for breaking bread, whatever the case may be. Interact with them. Everybody loves a free lunch.
Yeah, no doubt. You'll be getting one later today. Yeah. Okay, cool. So for you guys to also bring more time back, is there anything else that you've done for the agents to bring more time back into their world so they can focus on sales and bringing more time back into their world for their personal life?
Yeah, a lot of it is bringing in systems, just putting systems into place to make things happen quicker. Okay. I mean, it's to the point that we've gotten a little maybe fanatical with it. But like we have a storage unit where we keep some stuff off site. And so when an agent has to go grab it, everything's organized, everything's in place, everything's systematized. Right. Gotcha. And to the degree where they don't have to. Right. We're bringing on a runner, essentially, to help give them some time back. Right. It's one agent producing, 2 average deals pays for a runner. Right. You ask that agent if they would like that time back. Yes. Especially when it's shared amongst the team. So finding ways to do that, ways that we can take things off their plate. I mean, even to the extent our agents were struggling with trying to keep up with who they needed to talk to. So we just said, okay, we have somebody who, her job is to sit at a desk. That's what her personality is. She is not going to get on a sales call. Right. So what she does is she puts the list together and send it to the agents, and all the agents have to do is carry that list around with them. One of our agents has easily a 30-minute drive every day to and from work with no traffic. Dang. The list is there. In Charlotte? Yeah, in Charlotte. In Charlotte, north side to the south side. Cool. She's got the list, and she doesn't have to struggle through who do I need to call. She doesn't have to worry about it. She just sits there and says, okay, here's who I'm going to call. Right. And what's interesting now is it's actually reminding her of other people that aren't on the list that she needs to be calling. So she's adding them to the list now. Is this
Amanda? No, that's right. The other Amanda hasn't heard from me in a while. Right. Yeah, I can see that.
Or she'll call somebody in there and they'll mention the group that they're a part of. Right. Oh, I forgot that mom's group. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cindy's in that mom's group. I need to call Cindy. Right. So it's just, it's giving them time to be able to think. One thing that I learned is a lot of salespeople need more time to think through what they're doing, things like that. They need downtime. It's really hard to be on. Believe me, when I was going on 2 to 3 appointments a day, right, and then still running the team, right. Of course I needed a whole lot of other help running the team, but it's hard to go 3 or 4 appointments in a row, right. And so agents need downtime from one intense, listing appointment to the next one. Right.
Yeah, because it's mentally draining too, right? It starts to exhaust you.
There's very few people that can do it and do it a lot. Right. It's just one thing. I think I was blessed to be able to go from one to the other and it not really faze me. Right. I think part of it is because I love talking to people. I actually pull energy from other people. Right. In conversations. Right. So I love doing it. Some people, it's actually a drain on their energy.
Right. Exactly. So that's awesome, man. And I heard you say within the class earlier that one of the main focuses is to bring your agents into more of a 40-hour work week.
Yeah, so that's a personal goal I have. Yeah. It's not on our team's goals or 135. I personally want to work as hard as I can to bring everybody in the team into 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
We all know that, we're agents, we work all the time, but I really want to push that more.
Right.
Whether or not that's healthy, I haven't done any studies on whether or not 40 hours a week is healthy or not. I know in different cultures it's different times.
Right.
But I do know that our kids need us.
Yeah. 100%.
We were talking about that in church yesterday. Our kids need to see us living for Christ. Mm-hmm. It's hard to do that if you're never around.
Right.
So I kind of am pushing that back to the team right now. I'm like, be around your kids. Be the influence your kids need to see.
Yeah.
Because nobody else is going to do it. And honestly, seeing what we have in our school systems right now, not saying anything about teachers or whatever, but I just know that I want to be a big part of what my kids see.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Especially North Carolina, we are number 48 or 40, pretty low.
We're just ahead of last place for taking care of our teachers.
Yeah.
So our teachers are stressed out.
Oh yeah.
And then coming to work.
Yep.
I'm lucky that I have a business that allows me to literally check out and go, and I don't do it enough. But to go be around some of these kids, I didn't coach my son's basketball team, and this Saturday is their last game. But it's funny because some of the kids started calling me coach because I'm there all the time. And I started realizing that until my son gets to the level that is above my expertise, which maybe he's already there, I'm not sure yet. He's in the 6-year-old league.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe he's already there for basketball,
yeah.
But I want to be a part of it and help out.
Right.
And because I know that that the coaches even need that extra help.
Right.
We had a coach that was a middle school coach that was at the end of a rough day yesterday at the end of the day. And it was awesome seeing a handful of men just thank him for spending a few extra minutes with us.
Right.
And it's just, like you said, we're almost last place, and that's not a category you want to be last in.
Right, exactly. So it sounds, it sounds like that you're putting a lot of focus on more of the personal life as well. And how long would you say that the investments are at a place to where the cash flow is coming in at a point to where you could really bring back almost the whole week if you decided to?
Yeah, so we actually, interesting question, because that's actually how we came up with our goals.
Right.
One is we looked at real estate as a whole and says, there's a lot of changes happening in real estate. We're building a sustainable business based on an industry that's a portion of the industry that's harder to get into. Mm-hmm. When you talk about some of these companies that are tech companies, they can get in the middle of your expired listing conversations. Mm-hmm. The data's out there. Everybody has the data or pays for the data. It's very hard for them to get between me and Dave, my son's basketball coach.
Right.
Because we have a relationship.
Yep. You
can't get in the middle of that. So we know that we're building some sustainability to our business. But my brother and I sat down and said, where do we see a healthy, business being? And we said, okay, we think that easily for 10 years we can sustain the ability without anybody really coming in and making a big difference. So we based our long-term goals on, we've got 10 years to make this happen. So 10 years puts us both, at way before most people retire. And not that we're going to retire, but like you said, we can pull it back and transition however we want.
Right, exactly.
So we're like, okay, we're gonna knock this out hard.
Yeah.
For 10 years, we're gonna do what it takes to hit our goals for 10 years. And I know that talking about going to 10x, and I've been there. I've listened to Grant. He's amazing in what he teaches and stuff. And for us, we figured out the healthy number for us to hit that goal in 10 years. Now, if we hit it a couple years early, great. But I'm not going to shy away from the goal of getting everybody at 40 hours. And that's like now. That's not a 10-year thing. That's a now thing.
Right.
Because 10 years from now, my daughter's in college.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to miss the 10 years during that time.
Right.
So how do I build this so that I still have that now?
Right.
I still hit those goals 10 years from now. So we figured that out. And then we said, this is how we're gonna move from year to year to be able to hit that goal, do the things we want to do, and still have the time to give back to our family now. Mm-hmm. So we're not shying away from that. I have some personal family goals about how much we're giving back,
Right.
Financially, time wise, everything else to our area of Charlotte, or I guess into Charlotte in general,
Right.
through a lot of the stuff our church does. But as you're saying, the point to where that passive income really starts to come in,
Right.
we see it as building it for about 10 years and then having the ability to do whatever needs to happen.
Gotcha.
It may be, hey, we need you to stay in the business for 5 more years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. It may be that there's a new opportunity that we can be a part of that may be even outside of what we're doing. Great.
Exactly.
The business is built to an area, to a level that now we can bring somebody else in to run it.
Exactly. And you guys were you guys there at one point where someone else was in running it? Because I heard you mention level 7.
Yeah, we were at 7th level for a full year. The owner was completely out. We were. It was great.
Yeah.
The problem is that the profit was the same as the year before.
Right.
That's not really what they wanted.
Right.
That's not what the team wanted. It's not where we wanted to be at. And so what we did was we said, one is we were missing one of our biggest expenses, and not paying attention to the whole thing. Once we started paying attention to the whole thing and realizing that we were leaving money on the table, for whatever reason, I actually still don't even know the reason why. We sat there and said, let's just fix it. So we went back in and built the team back. Like I said, I think we're at like a 3 or a 4 when we built it back.
So a level, for anybody who's listening that may not know, level 7 is the team leader or the person who's built the team is out, done. Yeah. It's an asset, and the asset's kicking off cash. And to break it down to a level 3, you have no longer sales agents, you just have admin. So, and it's you're back in the business, and you're doing both sides, buyer and seller. I mean, you're 100% back in the business, and you might have some admin help.
Yeah, and
that's how much it's scaled back.
So for us, and we were, like I said, we were kind of a hybrid 3-4 type of thing.
Gotcha.
Back then. But it was, you can't just go to a perfect level backwards. Like it was kind of hard for us to do,
sure.
Especially because we had producing agents.
Right.
The other thing that we realized is we had people on the team that weren't being honest with themselves. We talked about self-awareness before. They were kidding themselves. They wouldn't do the activities that they needed to do. We had one that was doing every activity but not doing enough business. So what were all these conversations looking like? And so when we dove into it, we started realizing that, they were talking about high school basketball instead of real estate, but they were counting them as business conversations. Yeah. So we had to pull back some of that stuff a little bit more and saying, to help other people be successful, we've got to make sure that we own 100% of this. Yeah. And that's what we did, is we went back in and said, okay, this is how we're going to fix it. So instead of looking for people that want to be on our team, we're looking for people that we can help create opportunities for them where it's not just a matter of being on our team. Right. It's not a matter of being able for us to hang out with them or whatever the case may be. It's more about finding people who will do the work, at the commitment level that's crazy high, so they can achieve things in life they didn't think of 2 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got to be big. It's got to be big for them and life-changing for them.
Well, I go back to when I got into real estate, and, I won't mention what I made my first year, but I was happy with it because it was the same as my income the year before that. Right. So it was comfortable. Yeah. And it took me about 2 or 3 years to realize that my mindset was really low. Yep. I didn't have big dreams. I thought I did because I was going to buy real estate and do all this stuff with it, but I had very small dreams at that point. Right. I couldn't even get beyond my own ceiling. Well, one of the things that we're saying is we want to find people that, they're like, I'm scared of what you're talking about. Yeah. Great. Because guess what? I've been there too. Yep. It's, the first time that somebody that was working with us came to me, who's about 50 years old, that his kids are in high school. And he said, I'm dependent on the income that you help produce. If you don't go sell these houses, this is a new construction company I was working with, where I did all of the sales and marketing for the construction company, and I had a full real estate company. Right. The guy said, if you don't sell these houses, I can't feed my family. And that shocked me because it's the first time in my life I ever sat there and said, I have people that are looking up to me that are 20 years older than me.
Right.
And I am literally providing for their families. That was kind of a shock. And I said, okay, how big do we need to build this?
Mm-hmm. So you'll hear that some people, given the job, they take a vacation for a week, and it's hard for them to get back into the business and back into their job. So for you guys took off a year. I won't say take off. I'm sure you guys were, but not involved for a year and then had to jump back. How hard was that transition? Was it hard? Was it difficult for you guys?
So Jay was the one that took time off. He was building something else.
Yeah.
That was amazing, and he learned a lot from it, which he was able to pull back in the team. It was a little bit of a hard transition because we had spent so much energy telling all of our people that they were going to work with me instead of him.
Yeah.
And so people would still call him, and they're like, no, I want Jay's answer to this. And it was, for me, part of it was, but I already know the answer. Like, I know this is what I do.
Right.
I was a broker in charge for a couple of years before. So like something that these people thought was a hard decision, like I dealt with it before.
Right.
So the hardest transition was just teaching ourselves and our clients, the change back into it.
Right.
And to remind ourselves that it wasn't a demotion back into the business.
Right.
We're having to do some things that we didn't necessarily want to do, that we'd rather just be like, you know what, I'm just going to take easy street and not do it.
Right.
But we realized that wasn't going to get us where we were going.
Right. By
coming back in and honestly doing a large part of stuff that we weren't touching before, we started realizing where some of our gaps were. Mm-hmm. Our systems weren't built well. That was one of the biggest things, is that I had a system in place, but it was in my head. Mm-hmm. So when he came back in and took over as our listing specialist, and literally I handed it back to him, we started realizing he was doing it differently than me.
Yep.
Now the good thing is a lot of our marketing and stuff was done the same way, but because it was something that we built together, but we started missing some things there because we didn't have a system in place.
What was one of the biggest gaps that you saw in the system?
Communication. We communicate differently. That was a very clear difference. In a couple of different ways. He does instantaneous communication. I spend a little bit more time. I don't know if it's seasoning it or whatever the case may be. I just spend more time before I'm not that instant communicator back with information. He also spends a lot more time, and he'll spend a lot more communication in texting than I do.
Right.
I get on the phone with sellers a lot more than he does. It's just style differences.
Yeah.
But working with somebody 2 or 3 times, and then Jay starts working with them, and they're like, if it feels differently, that's not good.
Exactly.
So we didn't have those systems built out really well. And it's funny because a lot of people don't realize your communication is one of your biggest systems.
Yep.
We just don't talk about it a lot because it's not a computerized system.
Right. Exactly. So if you were to, maybe a newer agent or an agent who's been in the business for a little while, what should they get started on right now in the system that will prevent them years down the road to restructure the system?
Communicating to their database consistently from the beginning. Having a database.
Having one, step one.
Yeah, having one, step one, that they know where it is. I mean,
Exactly.
You heard me say it earlier. My first 10 years in the business, Excel was my database.
Right.
And I could use Excel today if I needed to.
Yeah.
It would be a little bit more cumbersome, but it's I had Excel and templated emails. Mm-hmm. And when I mean templated emails, I still didn't have a lot of the stuff that most people today have, that I even have today. I would have Word documents saved in a folder that says email templates.
Same.
And then there's I have a folder that says thank you note templates.
Yeah.
So I have to use those to write thank you notes, because otherwise I get stuck sitting around. So that's having that database where you know how you're communicating with them, and then the common questions or whatever that you get, here's your template for it.
Right. Yeah. What would be the second thing?
The second thing is, I would say, having a good system for both your listing side and then your contract to close side.
Yeah.
Those two, like knowing what those steps are. We have an amazing contract to close. She's our executive assistant. She runs our director of operations, whatever title you want to give her. She does it.
Yeah, it's like
she does
15 titles for that.
Yeah, it is. She has built an amazing system that is hard to duplicate. The number of touches our clients get from the time they go under contract to the time they close, and then even thereafter, is almost astonishing. When we started working with Movement Mortgage and you would get an email from Movement Mortgage that you're on the next step, that's essentially the system she built out before we started working with Movement. Wow. Or any other mortgage company. I know there's a couple others that do it similar to that now.
Sure.
There's an email that goes out that tells them who their utility companies are. Hey, you need to contact them before closing. And by the way, that email goes out 3 times before closing. So I'm at the closing table and somebody goes, I haven't set up my utilities yet. And I said, oh, well, don't worry. You've got 3 emails about it because I know the system.
Right, exactly.
And the guy forgot to turn on his water.
Right.
And called me on Friday freaking out because it's Friday. You haven't set it up. You're not going to have it till Monday.
Right.
Which that goes back into, once you get really deep in some of your systems, or at least in knowing who you are and who your team is, that one was easy for me. I called our contract to close person. I said, hey, they don't have water. What are we going to do? We talk about creating experience for our clients. We talk about the gold standard at Ritz-Carlton. We talk about the Disney experience. We harped on that for 2 or 3 years with our team. So I picked up the phone and called, and she says, okay, what do you want to do? And I'm sitting there, and we're both brainstorming. And in about 30 seconds, it was a quick brainstorm. In about 30 seconds, it was find the closest hotel, reserve their room for Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. Get them a couple of gallons of drinking water, and then get a 5-gallon bucket and call the neighbors and find out if we can use their outside spigots so that we can get 5 gallons of water so that they can finish the cleanup jobs and stuff they have to do inside their new house. Right. Their first house, by the way. And make this something that's memorable to them. And so that was because we were so in sync, that's just what we do, is we're going to solve the problem at a degree that may cost us way too much of our commission, but we're going to do it right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so that's what we did. I mean, I think most people would be like, well, yeah, that's what you want to do, but most people won't spend the money to go pay for a hotel for 3 nights.
Right, exactly.
Especially that area of town was a little more expensive than I wanted it to be.
But I mean, did they talk about it to their friends about how they were taking?
Yeah, so it's interesting that we ended up not doing the hotel.
Oh, I thought we were going down that road.
Well, we offered it.
Gotcha.
The engaged couple got into a conversation and decided that let's just be honest, she decided that his stupidity was not going to cost us, the hotel. And I told him, no, that's not how it works. We've already paid for it. We were sincere about it. We're going to take care of you. And, my first question was, after we fixed it, once we got the hotel and water and everything like that, the next question was, where did we drop the ball in our system? Right. I said, I want to see it. Yeah. So we went back and looked, and we didn't drop the ball in our system. But how could we make it clear?
Right, exactly.
And we went back, and we still couldn't figure that out. It's the only time it's ever happened. Right. Okay, well, we have a pretty good system in place. Right. So what else can we do? Right. And that was the thing that we had to look at closer.
Yeah. I think a lot of people miss that because I was told something a while ago that I still hold on to, is with every obstacle, there's an opportunity. Yeah. With every obstacle, there's an opportunity. And so if people see those obstacles that they run into as an opportunity to fill a gap, or an opportunity to add to the system, or an opportunity for these people to for you to offer some type of service where they're talking about you a lot more. I mean, instead of saying, well, they screwed that one up, there's opportunity in that, and you have to be able to recognize it. And it's cool that you're surrounding yourself with people who recognize it in 15 seconds.
Yeah, that's that's something that's always been big on our team, is just to, thinking the same way. How do you take care of people? That's important. Our dad taught my brother and I customer service when we were young. Right. You go above and beyond every single time. The dealership, so he did car dealerships for years. He would build amazing customer service into car dealerships. scored some of the highest that Ford and Honda's ever seen.
Yeah.
By treating people well. I mean, I've got so many stories about that, but like people would show up on Sundays and they weren't open, but we were there and they were looking at cars. And so he would take care of them. And so a couple years later, next thing you know, people show up on Sundays and my brother and I are out there selling them cars because they're there and they want to buy a car, sell them a car.
Right.
There's a youth group from Florida that came up in a 15-passenger van and the van broke and it was going to take them like a day or two to get the part. And so, my dad's response was pretty simple. They went and got one of the 15-passenger vans off the lot and sent them all the way up to Maryland on a mission trip.
Wow.
Like, that's crazy. He just ruined a brand new vehicle because it's going to have too many miles on it by the time it gets back.
Right.
From a beach mission trip.
Yeah, but you're still talking about it.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that he just taught us how to do it.
Yeah.
Customer service isn't something that's easy. It takes time to learn it. It's not common for most people to do it. And so, or maybe it is, and maybe I'm just, I don't get it or whatever, but like watching my dad do customer service for 30 years made it easy for me to start making decisions.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. And I remember I had a friend who sat in with Gary Keller on one of his masterminds or labs. I don't remember where he got the notes. He got the notes and I asked for him. And basically there's like 4 or 5 pages or notes, maybe more. And there's only 3 things I took out of it. And it was know your market, build relationships, build experiences. That's it. Yeah. And cool here is an MRE, right? And that's meal ready to eat for the military here. And I'm like, listen, if you want to eat in real estate, know your market, build strong, beautiful relationships, and give strong, beautiful experiences.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, we look at every single transaction as an opportunity to build a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
And there's very few times I can say we've sold right around 1,000 homes. There's very few of those that we haven't continued to build a relationship afterwards.
Right.
I mean, you're going to run into people that you don't mesh with. Right. It happens.
Sure.
But be very careful in those. Who's at fault for why that happens? I know a couple of the negative feedback that we've gotten in some of the transactions. Sometimes I just didn't handle things correctly.
Right.
That happens. So how do you learn from that? Mm-hmm. How do you improve your own service based on that? And sometimes there's people that you just can't make happy.
Right.
For whatever reason. And it's there's people that get in their own way, but our goal was to go in and build the experience where I always want people to go through an experience with us. And then if they ever have another experience in real estate, in another city where we don't have ability to give them a connection, or they had an experience before us and they're like, is this how it's done?
Yeah.
And that for us is really important.
Yeah. So for me, any position I've ever taken or anything that I've jumped into, I'd want to do it so dang well that anybody who was in that position later or whatever, like they kind of people were like, man, I missed that standard. But I think it is that wrong to do that?
No, it's okay. Well,
I've talked to myself sometimes like, dude, that might be a little messed up, but it raises my standard, right? And it raises my potential because I want to do it the best it's ever been done.
Right. Well, and it's not that you want the people behind you to fail.
Right.
Right. But what you want is you want to raise the standard. And then if you're mentoring or training the people that come next, you're like, man, I want them to do it better than me.
100%. They should be able to crush me.
Everybody says it all the time. Yep. That, when you bring people in, you want to bring people in that like you don't want to ever be the smartest person in the room.
Right. Exactly.
The great thing is that I don't have to worry about that very often.
Right.
But like when you bring in our team and stuff, like I know that collectively, one of our team members said this the other day, we're a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
Like you put the 4 of us that are in leadership on our team together. I don't care what industry you put us in. It's a force to be reckoned with. Right. Because we recognize our strengths and our weaknesses and that self-awareness and what we're good at. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is we're still working on that.
Right.
We're still working on what are our strengths and how can we make them better and how can we prevent our weaknesses from pulling us back. And at the same time, when Christina said that we are a force to be reckoned with, like there's some power behind those words. Right. And so we started looking at that and saying, okay, well, if that's true, let's make this happen in our businesses.
Right.
And to get back to it, you're rarely is a force going to be reckoned with if it spews out in a wide stream. You know, you talk about the power of a laser.
Right.
You know, when the power of a laser is how fine it is.
Yeah.
How small the focus is on it. So for us to be that amazing force, we've got to be something as small as the beam of light that comes out like a laser. So that's when we started saying no to a lot of stuff. Like all these things just kind of came together at once. When we were in Keller Williams family reunion in Anaheim last year, we rented an Airbnb. So the majority of our leadership team, because one person wasn't able to come, we spent time together. I mean, we spent time together, hanging out on the couches, talking about stuff, saying, how do we accomplish what we want to accomplish? And the one big idea that came out of it all was simplicity. How do we make our businesses simpler? How do we get rid of some of this extra stuff and do who we are consistently?
Right.
And stop trying to do these other things that everybody says we should do.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think through those conversations, a lot of creativity starts flowing in your mind to get rid of things, to bring it back to a simple formula. Right.
Instead of getting creative to come up with new ideas, we got creative how to get rid of ideas and how to take two and make it one.
Yeah. Have you read Profit First?
Yeah.
They talk about that in there.
I actually had a great conversation with him at a conference I went to in St. Louis, and he started asking us about our business, and it was a property management conference. So when I started telling him what we were doing, and by the way, we're not there yet. Like you don't copy us and say this is a Profit First company. We just started diving into it and stuff. We take we give things a little bit of time.
Sure.
Because we don't want to just pull the trigger on things too quickly. Especially something like that, as important as it is. We've started making some small steps. We're about to make some bigger ones. But when I started having conversations and I just sat there and I'm just like, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. He's like, you're there and there's nothing wrong. Like, it was just interesting to like dive into the book, especially with the author. But to sit there and recognize that instead of having all these different things that we could do, we're starting to make it simpler.
Yeah.
And so when one idea will work and use it 3 different ways, do that versus having 3 ideas that you have to do 3 different ways.
Yes.
It takes too much energy.
Exactly. No, I agree 100%. That was probably the hardest book I like to write notes on my books. It's probably the hardest just because of how detailed and strategic it is. I mean, it's a great model, and just I was like, oh my gosh, there's another level. There's another level. There's another level. But it does. I mean, it starts you off with profit day one. So I think that's pretty cool. And the people that I'm coaching, since I just got done with this book, that's something that we're going to be implementing too. Because I mean, how many times you hear businesses like you were saying earlier are crushing it, this many units, this much gross, and they're in the red.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, man, that hurts, right? So. And
that's what, again, it goes back to, that's great that some of these, you know, and I don't know where, like most of the big teams in our company, I don't know where their profit is. It doesn't matter to me where their profit is. I'm sure they've made some good profit, but I'm sitting there looking at it and saying, but for me, like once I figured out what that profit number needed to be, then great. We don't have to go do some crazy building on top of that. Like we know where our profit is and where we want it to be.
Right.
And that book really helps you kind of revert back to, okay, wait, I was thinking about it all backwards. Now if I think about it, you know, with the end in mind first and build towards that first.
Right.
And protect yourself and things like that. So we've really started doing more of that. It's funny though, when you started talking about the envelope system.
Yeah.
I started the envelope system in college. You know, I don't use it today the same way I did back in college, but in college, I mean, I literally had, you know, here's school.
Right.
Here's my bills.
Right.
Here's the apartment, electricity, all that stuff was in line. And then the very last one was, how I was going to, the first envelope, literally I split the money in half and half of it went directly into savings. I was in college. I mean, what savings did I have? But I had a good job. Yeah. Actually, I did. It was pretty good.
Good.
Had a good job. Put half of it in savings. And then the other half went in those folders, and I started with the first envelope, and went all the way through. And the last one was like, I forget what I even called it, but it was like stupid spending money type of stuff. Yeah. And then once that one was
full. What was the first
full,
thing you bought with that stupid spending money?
Well, so I went to school in a really small town, so Walmart was like our only store.
Yeah.
So we'd go into Walmart, and whether it was a DVD, because they had just come out and were a big thing. It makes me sound old. When they had just come
People
out.
People used to hang them at their... on their rearview mirror in their car, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Like disco balls.
So we would, we'd go buy stuff there or whatever, or go out to nice meals and stuff. But just small things. But the crazy part is that once all the envelopes got filled, then I just put all the money in another box, and literally would just dump the cash in another box.
Right.
And so it just, I built a system that started understanding that philosophy, but I didn't understand it in depth. I mean, that was the extent of what I understood. So jumping into this book and really being able to change the thought process of not just what our investments are long term, but the business today,
right? Where
we're focused on the right things and questioning everything. I mean, so I listened to the book as an audio book.
Yes, me too. And he does great, doesn't he?
Oh my god!
He's funny too.
It killed me. Like every 15 seconds, I had to stop and like save the note. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to read this book now.
Yeah.
So I went back to do that, but like when he was questioning everything, and so and he gave some great examples, but I sat there and said, okay, I love questioning stuff. I love putting things across the litmus test.
Right. Yeah.
That was one of my struggles in a church, is that I would do that with everything in the church.
Right.
And people were, I know that some people said, maybe not to me, but said it in their heads, like, do you ever allow God to work? I do, but God also gave me talents.
Yeah. Use them.
And so I sat there and I'm like, it doesn't make sense to do this over and over again and waste $100,000.
Right.
When we have a ministry that has a $10,000 budget that has 300 more times influence.
Right.
It didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And so I get the whole let God do his work, but that was where I started questioning stuff. And now I take it back into our business and like, does this make sense?
Right.
And so I question, you heard me earlier when I was talking to an agent here in your office, what is your ROI on your open houses? Are you calculating your time expenses? Right. And I'm not against open houses. I'm not against door knocking. Right. There are some people that need to get out right now in the rain and do both of those things.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any other business.
Exactly.
But once you get to a certain point and you've built some business, it's probably better to stay within your business than to do some extra things.
Yep.
But if you're not putting your pencil to the paper and really watching it, which is exactly what he teaches you, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's any part of your business, you have to do that.
Yeah, he holds it all accountable.
Yeah,
I love that.
And so that really pushed us back to, okay, this is what we have to do.
Right, exactly. And my website should be at provenbyruben.com, and I got that on there. It's actually as a blog, so if anybody wants to go and check it out, Profit First blog, check it out. All right, so I'm gonna see if I can guess some of these questions, because we're gonna go eat and have this small private mastermind real quick.
Yeah.
So I always ask questions at the very end, and it's on my phone, and I'm kind of off the cuff, seeing if I can remember them. So this I've not done this yet before. I don't want to ask all of them, but I will ask them. What is something outside your profession right now that you would want to move into as a career? Something like that. That's gonna kill me. Something like that.
That's interesting. I focus so much on wanting to help people. It would have to be something back into that. I mean, it's hard to say because I have such a sales background.
Right.
Marketing is what I love to do. I thought. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was going to go to school for.
Right.
And then that changed a little bit, especially when I went into ministry.
Right.
But then I realized it wasn't marketing as much as I like marketing. It's the sales side of it It's the marketing into the
Right.
sales side. But that's where a lot of my energy and passion is. But then I can't ever take away the part of helping people.
Right.
So as much as I love the influence of marketing, that's a big part of it for me.
So it would be you'd move into the marketing world. Did I hear that correctly?
I don't know. I mean, that's again, it's the helping people. I don't know if I would have to go back into a nonprofit world,
Gotcha.
which would be tough.
Right.
Maybe that's my next career when they don't pay me and I can do it.
Yeah. Because the question is, what profession other than your own would be fun to attempt? It's worded so much better.
Yeah.
Than me.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, just it's I interact with a lot of nonprofits around Charlotte,
Right.
just through stuff I do. I met a gentleman who's really involved with a lot of high schoolers. I have a lot of my youth ministry experience gave me a lot of time working with older high schoolers. There's so many of them that need help because they don't have a safe home, a healthy home, that type of thing. That they just need somebody who's willing to be real and honest with them.
Right.
It's and I think that media is telling them how to live their lives.
Sure.
So I think it would have to be something to do with that. I'm not saying that it wouldn't involve multiple different things, but
Right. Yeah.
it's that I have a huge passion for that age group.
Right.
It's they don't know what they don't know yet,
Right.
and society is not telling them the truth.
So what is say you're in a group of some of those individuals, what's the first thing you bring up to bring light to some stuff they should be focusing on?
I think it's finding out where they're getting their, and I can't say it exactly this way, but for us, the way that we talk about it, where's their vision? What's pushing them in life? And then where are they getting it from?
Right.
Because most of it is coming from media. It's coming from, well, this guy makes $1 million on YouTube videos, so I'm going to do YouTube videos. And, they get into stuff like that. And they're, if their value in life is misguided because of culture.
Sure.
Don't even get into Hollywood stuff, but just culture as a whole.
Right.
It's so misguided, and their value in them as a person is so much more strong, more real if it's centered in God than it is if they're out there living their life to be part of this world.
Right.
And so that's what would be the conversations that I would start with, because I think that so many of them are caught up into this, generation me and stuff, where you can, what is it? I don't even know the acronym anymore, but I do what I want. I saw somebody with I forget what it's called. Somebody out there will know, but they, just I can do whatever I want, and I don't care about the repercussions or anything like that. And it's like, no, that's not right.
Right.
It's you don't get to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You don't get to be. I mean, you can strive to be a great person, but if you sit there and say I'm going to do it at the hurt of others,
right,
or even the hurt of yourself, and you don't even know it.
Yeah. You need to start talking to people like immediately.
I mean, again, it's
right.
So I work with for a specific reason, so I have time with my family. I'm not working with our high school students right now,
right,
at their level. But our church has high schoolers that work with elementary age kids. Middle school and high schoolers do. Well, I work with that group, I get to be around them.
That's awesome.
And just get to know them and hang out with them and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite failure that you believe has set you up for success?
Favorite failure.
And maybe not,
as
the negative of a failure, but a huge learning experience.
I think one of the biggest learning experiences for me, going back into self-actualization and self-realization, realizing that our own innate faults to get somewhere through, without earning it and stuff like that. What happened for me is going in and saying, I wasn't utilizing my strengths well, and I wasn't shying away from our weaknesses, because I was told at one point, build on your weaknesses and stuff, and you know, and all of that, and that's great if you want to be status quo,
right?
But I sat there and said, I started not knowing enough about who I was, because I didn't want to look in the mirror. Like, I wasn't
right.
I had a lot of I believed in myself, but I wasn't always happy,
right,
with who I was, but I didn't ever tell anybody. And it wasn't like, I wasn't one that was ever, you never had to worry about me. Let me put it that way.
right.
Like, I wasn't ever going to go do anything wrong or anything like harmful or anything like that. But I wasn't always happy. And I think most kids are that way.
Right.
But I had the opportunity to start to realize that the people that I circled the people that I focused on and spent time with, when I realized they really cared about me. So I was really blessed to be around that group of people throughout high school.
Right.
So going back to 7th grade, the same people that I hung out with my senior year of high school, like, that was the core for me. So I didn't have to worry about that. So fast forwarding it 10 years, realizing that the people you surround yourself with can actually impact your character.
Oh yeah.
That was important, because it wasn't that I got around wrong people after that, but I wasn't around the right people.
Right.
And so then when I started saying, okay, I'm going to start being around the right people again, and more. So in business, the same way. So there's people that work in our office, that work in our company, that, are in real estate sales, that I won't interact with.
Right.
Because I know how they do business, and I don't want to ever think the way they think.
Right. I don't think you will.
No, I don't think so either. But that's a big part of it for me, is
sure.
that, like,
absolutely.
I didn't realize that that until I got really confident with who I was, that I couldn't push away who some of those people were.
Right.
So if I wasn't around good influences, I could be influenced.
Absolutely.
And then years later, I now have the ability to recognize those situations a lot more. I guess that comes with maturity.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right.
But that was a big part of it for me, is like knowing that stuff gives you that ability. And now that it's become more of a strength of mine,
right.
So that self-awareness part, I think, was
it's huge, right?
Yeah. Most kids don't have it because they just don't know. They're not taught that.
Right.
There's so many things that parents aren't teaching their kids.
Yeah. And
part of it is because they're stuck without it too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, man. Since I've peppered you with questions, what question do you have for me?
So let's see. What's the biggest thing rolling around in your head right now?
How to hit a big, audacious goal. And it's something that I haven't put on myself in a very long time, right? Until coming back from 10X. So there's a few things that I'm looking at to make sure that happens. But there's one big goal for me right now that has to happen, and that is what's rolling around in my head. And honestly, one of the avenues that's going to get me to that point is I'm going through it right now. It's basically a class or a module. So getting back on that module to get me closer to the big goal for myself is what's rolling around in my head today.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
No, I think that's what, again, knowing where you are and where you want to go.
Right.
One of the things that I think is important is making sure that if you can't hold yourself accountable, who holds you accountable? Mm-hmm. And if it is you that holds you accountable, one of the things that I've started that's in my head right now about that is if you're responsible for your own accountability, if you don't have somebody doing that, then you have to, not only do you have to reward yourself, you have to punish yourself.
Right.
And I know in the past, in our company, we've seen it done a couple of different ways. I've seen people write checks to different people and stuff like that.
Right.
And that can be great depending on whether or not you have a big checkbook.
Right.
But there's other ways to do it too. And I think that's But I see it as a both ways.
Right.
That you have to give yourself the positive and the negative. Both reinforcements
absolutely.
make it, I think, it even more powerful.
Yeah. There's I don't know what's wrong with me. There's something that I do where I will 100% commit to something, and if it doesn't go right, we lose everything. So the pain, we lose everything. So there is no. You have to hit this goal. I mean, you've committed to cut 3 streams. I mean, this has to happen, or you lose everything. Tangible. Yeah. You know, not relationships or anything like that, but it's got to happen. So, what question do you have for everyone who's listening?
I think it's one of the biggest things for me is clarity of vision.
Right.
You know, when you're talking to people that are that you're working with, is, you know, how clear is your vision? Mm-hmm. Can you see it, or are you in a fog? Mm-hmm. Because it's not only this, can you see it, but can you see the path that gets you there? Mm-hmm. Can you see the stops? As I was driving in, I saw the 5 green lights in front of me, and I'm like, that's awesome. I'm going to get here on time.
Right.
Then I realized the reality is they're going to start turning red before I get to them.
Yep.
And so when you're talking about that, it's what can I do to prevent some of that stuff from happening, you know? Yeah. And even though I don't control any of that, I have to control the situation I'm in to make sure that, okay, one, I can't get stuck, you know, and everything else, or get behind anybody else to keep me on track. But with our businesses, so what are you doing right now to clarify your current vision? Mm-hmm. Meaning that, you know, we talk about it with our goal setting in this company. Do your goals, are they SMART goals?
Right.
Can you define them clearly? Can every single person say yes or no to your goals?
Right.
And that was something that I think was really important for us.
Yeah.
We don't ever want to lose. So for a couple of years, we set some goals, and then we got really gray on the other ones, so that if we lost, it wasn't as big of a deal.
Right.
But now that the vision of where we want to be is so, like you said, mm-hmm. it's ours won't be lose everything tangible.
Right.
Where we're headed.
Yeah.
And part of that is because I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
So
right.
What may have taken us longer to build, I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
So we built up, essentially, I mean, our safety nets may be some people's goals right now.
Right.
At the same time, building it year after year after year, and mm-hmm. other people getting to the point, and they say, now this is where I'm at. That clarity of vision that I have for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
allows me to, when I see that I'm moving forward faster than I need to be, mm-hmm. and I'm on track to getting where I want to go faster,
right?
Then I have the ability to make some slight adjustments.
Right.
So going back to your question about flipping, that's the answer to it.
Right.
I'm not spending any energy on it right now because I'm in the first year of this 10 years.
Exactly.
I mean, even though we started last year, we cheated and started last year.
Yeah.
This year's the beginning of it.
Right.
And it allows us to really track that. So that, I mean, that's my big thing, is that if your vision isn't clear, if you don't know where you're going, mm-hmm. Will you stop long enough to think about it? Mm-hmm. Sometimes that takes a day. Sometimes it takes weeks.
Well, and for me, and I think that's why I just love conferences sometimes, because, you know, you have to step out of the business, you know, and for me, and I stay in an Airbnb by myself, so I was able to step out, think, be challenged, and it's very important for you to step out of the business and do that as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So where can people find you?
So the easiest place to find us is thewhitegroup.com. We come up.
Easy.
Yeah.
That's it.
Took a little time to find that URL.
Yeah.
No, we actually, you know, of course we had to buy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was we're in Charlotte. We have great connection with a bunch of people, and we're always out here trying to help people.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you showing up today.
Yeah, definitely.
talking to me and answering these questions and giving these people the value that probably will change their trajectory of their personal life and their business. So I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Awesome, brother. Thank you.
Yep.